much of Ontario and Quebec through September to a much more seasonal pattern into next week. The pattern change starts as early as today in northern Ontario, tomorrow in the south, and then eventually by the time we hit Monday and Tuesday, we're into teen temperatures and rain across many communities. So that shift is happening. Enjoy the last kind of warmer day today. This morning it's 15 degrees in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. We're down to about 10 this morning in St. John's, Lab City, Iqaluit, Whitehorse, all starting the day right at 0. We've got 5 this morning in Regina, 16 in Winnipeg, 20 in Thunder Bay. Again, those big temperature differences happening through our western provinces because of this weather system that's now moving its way into northern Ontario. Later on this afternoon, we're still going to get up to like 27, 26 in Montreal, slightly cooler than yesterday, but full-on sun expected through southern Quebec as we head into the afternoon. Now, there's a big difference happening across communities in northern Ontario as rain is moving its way through. On the eastern edge of that, we're still seeing a lot of moisture present in the atmosphere. This morning, fog has developed in southwest Ontario through areas from Windsor up towards Chatham, including Leamington. We also have fog around St. Catharines this morning. And then a little bit farther north, right along that boundary with Quebec, including North Bay, we're seeing these dense fog advisories. So this is the 4th day in a row that fog has been a concern early morning. In the afternoon, it's just leading to that humidity and humidex values into the high 20s at least, if not low 30s. Now, a little bit further west, we're seeing this rain move its way through. So Thunder Bay, you've got rain and thunderstorms this morning, stretching down, south along Lake Michigan. This is going to move its way eastward as the day goes on. If you're in Sault Ste. Marie, you can anticipate a really cloudy day ahead, rain moving in for the afternoon, and similar for Elliott Lake, for the Sudbury region, for North Bay as well. In the south, by the time we head tomorrow morning, showers are possible through Barrie, through areas like London, Kitchener-Waterloo, and Toronto. And this is the beginnings of that change as we see Saturday overall, the day of transition. So it's not going to be a full-on rainy day by any means, but we do have that chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms as this front rolls its way through. This is going to move into the Ottawa region overnight Saturday into Sunday. But in behind it, there's another low that's set to move its way in, and that brings a steadier round of rain. Now, into next week, you can anticipate pretty much every day has that risk of rain with it and cooler temperatures. We're talking like teen highs across many cities that have been sitting close to 30 over the last week. Coming up, we're going to track all this weather into Atlantic Canada. But for now, here's what you can expect today. I've shared this story before, but when my son, my oldest, was 4 days old, he was born at the beginning of September in Calgary. And when he was 4 days old, there was like 1.5 feet of snow that fell that day. I brought down a lot of trees. Snow at this time of year is really wet and it's heavy because there's a huge amount of moisture available for snow to happen. But it's not out of the question to happen in parts of Alberta. And I tell this story, I start the weather forecast with that because this morning in parts of Alberta, right along the boundary there with BC, we're seeing snowfall at the higher elevations. Later on today, some of that snow is going to creep eastward toward Calgary. And that's because the temperatures are very cool within the province for today. We've got this weather system rolling through, bringing with it rain for areas of east central Alberta, west central Saskatchewan, right along the Yellowhead there. And then you see the flickers of purple in there. Some of the raindrops are falling as snowflakes this morning. Now, is it accumulating on the ground? Probably not, because the ground is still fairly warm and it's mixing with rain, but it still could be falling. And it's cool enough that for some areas, particularly those mountaintops, they are going to be white later on today. Even as we head toward the afternoon, you see that snow creeping its way southward, likely south of Canmore down into the Kananaskis. But Calgary, for example, if you've never been, Calgary sits really in the distinction between the prairies and the foothills. So the east end of the city is much flatter as you're heading east into Alberta, communities like Brooks, Medicine Hat, and then into Saskatchewan. The west end of the city is right into the foothills. So with that higher elevation, you are going to see a drop in temperatures and possible snow falling to kick off your Friday morning. Then all of that spreads its way eastward overnight Friday into Saturday, and we get into some thunderstorm potential for areas of Saskatchewan late Friday night into Saturday. Saturday itself looks to be very sunny across the region. BC sees a different weekend. We get a frontal system hitting the BC coast, central communities very wet. That'll spread down to Vancouver Island by early Sunday morning, but that drives a slight bump up in temperatures for areas of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Now, elsewhere in the country for Atlantic Canada, you've got incoming rain. Nova Scotia, it is a wetter day for southern communities, Yarmouth County, Shelburne County, for example. Sunshine in northern New Brunswick, variable clouds in Newfoundland and Labrador, but the greatest chance of wetter weather is in Nova Scotia for today. Now here's a look at your local forecast. We are about to see a big pattern shift in Ontario and Quebec and even into Atlantic Canada. You've started to see the change over the last couple of days. Less full-on sun, a little more active weather in the forecast. What's happening is we have high pressure at play that's breaking down. And as it breaks down, it allows for some active weather to move its way in. One thing that will persist, despite this pattern change, it is going to be rather muggy over the next couple of days. Not necessarily like hot muggy, but you know when it's humid outside and it's just kind of cool enough that you feel the chill? We're going to start to say that a little bit more. You're going to say, I feel it in my knees, and that might just be me. But you will notice the humidity within the air for the next couple of days, particularly the lower Great Lakes. And this map really shows it quite beautifully. You've got the drier air illustrated by the very desert-like looking coloring on the map, and then the moisture in the green. And that moisture just persists. And some of it is coming in the form of rain, some of it in the form of fog, but certainly when it's not foggy and it's not raining, you're going to notice the fact that the air feels a little moist, a little damp. Now, we've got rain falling this morning for areas right around Superior and east of Superior. It's about to get quite wet this afternoon. But ahead of that, what a gorgeous sunrise. Let's go to Sudbury, Ontario this morning. This view courtesy of Science North. Isn't that spectacular? Increases, and by the time we get into tomorrow, a pattern change is ahead, which is just really the meteorological way of saying the weather is about to get a little more active for you. In Atlantic Canada, we're already seeing the beginnings of that. We've had this weather system off the U.S. East Coast that's been kind of flirting with the region. A lot of active weather, a lot of flooding throughout the U.S. East Coast over the last couple of days. For Atlantic Canada, it really just means for Nova Scotia, you have so much more cloud today than you've had. You also have some rain through Yarmouth County, Shelburne County as well. Fundy, coast of New Brunswick, very overcast. PEI, northern New Brunswick, Cape Breton, more sunshine into the afternoon, but still seeing that cloud cover persist for Newfoundland and Labrador. And that's also part of why it has been cooler through the Avalon Peninsula, for example. We get into some rain Saturday afternoon. That's going to creep down through Labrador into northern Quebec, and then some showers possible in Cape Breton, for example. But still, you'll get glimmers of sun into the forecast, particularly along the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia, right as we head into Sunday afternoon. Now, coming up, I'm going to take you through the Ontario-Quebec forecast, what you can expect, with a full news recap coming up after the break.
Your morning is brought to you in part.
Included in that dense fog advisory this morning. We've got a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture in the air across parts of Ontario and Quebec, and that's contributing to it feeling a lot warmer within the region. Now, elsewhere in the country, this morning it's a lot cooler. Single-digit temperatures currently this morning in parts of Alberta, including areas to the west of Calgary itself, but westward toward Banff and Canmore, seeing possible snowflakes this morning right over that boundary with Alberta and BC. Now, some of that snow is going to migrate its way eastward off the Rockies as we head into the afternoon. We've got forecasted highs in the single digits, just barely making them into the doubles, and that will mean any rain has the possibility of flipping over. Did you know it can be as warm as 6 degrees Celsius at the surface and still have snow? And the reason being is that obviously as that rain is falling, it depends on the thickness of the atmosphere where those warmer temperatures are. So if it's a very small layer right at the surface that's sitting at 6 degrees and shortly up into the atmosphere, it's below freezing, those snowflakes don't have enough time to fully melt before they get to the surface. Anyway, I digress. We're going to have rain and active weather through southern Alberta right into the afternoon. Areas farther east, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, drier initially, but as we go overnight, it's likely you'll see thunderstorms rolling through. Then into overnight Saturday into Sunday, it does begin to clear for Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, but we've got a fresh influx of moisture coming in off the Pacific. That's going to hit the BC coast, bring a lot of rainfall there. It's likely that we'll see some sort of advisory, whether a special weather statement or rainfall warnings through the region just due to the amount of rain forecasted. This will then shift its way southward, and Sunday set to be a very wet day, initially for Vancouver and then eventually for the BC interior as well. Now, for Ontario and Quebec, we've got all of this moisture and humidity in the air. We've got an incoming weather system that is signaling the end to this dry stretch of weather that has been persistent, the longest stretch of dry weather that some communities have seen all year. That is about to change as we head into the next couple of days. Now, southwest Ontario waking up to that moisture in the air. We also have dense fog advisories that have just been lifted for the St. Catharines area, and then along the boundary with Quebec there, where visibility is reduced. But even as that fog dissipates, it just contributes to the moisture that's in the atmosphere, making it feel warmer than it is. And even as we go through the next couple of days, with this change, that moisture remains. What will be different is how it feels outside. So last couple of days have felt really warm. They've almost felt reminiscent of summer. As we go into next week, it's going to feel a little more damp. That would be how you would describe it. Anyway, this rain moves its way eastward through the day. Know that eventually will hit the lower Great Lakes as we head into tomorrow and then slide its way into Quebec. For now, here's a look at your local forecast. Rain that's moving its way north of Superior this morning that's going to track its way eastward. And as it does, not only will we see a warm up in the lower atmosphere where the air temperature warms up and that fog dissipates, but we'll see an introduction of cloud to the lower Great Lakes. And these bands of clouds associated with the weather system moving over from northern Ontario will prompt a cloudier day-to-day than we've had over the last couple. This is the beginnings of change. We've had an extended period of drier weather through many communities in Ontario and Quebec. And there was some talk about like, hey, this could be one of the driest Septembers since the 60s. That will start to change as we see not only the weather system rolling through today, bringing a chance of rain, risk of thunderstorms tomorrow on Saturday, but in behind that, there's another weather system tracking through northern Ontario, and the front associated with it by Sunday morning sits northeast of Superior, moving its way eastward, and that brings another round of active weather. This persists into Monday and Tuesday. Now, over the weekend, it will still be humid. It's not necessarily that cool, but into early next week, temperatures have the potential to dip below seasonal. The average high this time of year within the region sits close to the high teens, low 20s. So we will be a lot cooler. And part of that has to do with this incoming upper trough that pushes the upper ridge that's been dominant over the last week. It pushes it out as the upper trough moves in and brings with it the possibility of cooler weather. Now here's your local forecast.